ladies and gentlemen. It is a Monday. We are here on the Chinny L. And oh my God, we're the sun is out. Look how bright the sun just got when we came back here to the live. We are here to discuss a very interesting topic. And it is this world of Bitcoin. We don't know nothing about it. I had no clue about it until I ran into this guy a couple years ago at Eldora. We got us a racing enthusiast, a sprint car racing enthusiast. And his nickname he goes by is, well, when I met him at least, that was the Buckeye Bitcoin. Of course, Bitcoin surging in prices, surging in all kinds of elements and ways. And we have him on the line, ladies and gentlemen. We do have him on the line. Markle, Eminem in the Bitcoin industry. What are you doing over there? We already got commenters saying you're a scam. You put Enron to shame, Bitcoin. What is happening?
Well, first off, an honor to be on, Chaz. I'm excited to talk my two favorite subjects, motorsports and Bitcoin. I can tell you right now, Bitcoin is not a scam, but I can understand why at first glance you may think it is. I, too, thought Bitcoin was a scam when I first heard about it back in 2014. And it didn't take until about 6 years later in 2020 when I saw what was happening with COVID and money printing that I realized, like, wow, Bitcoin is a very powerful tool that separates money from state, and it is not a scam. And dang, I wish I didn't think that at the time, but that is the thought process we all have when we first get into Bitcoin. We all think it's a scam. Everybody I've talked to. So, I'm here to explain my position, talk motorsports, and yeah, just stoked to chat it up with you again.
Well, I didn't think we would get into this topic until later on, but I guess it kind of makes sense with the true slander from this guy in the comment section. What is real money? I guess that would be the question, right? Like, we see dollar bills in our wallet, right? And we think that is money, and it is. It's used to exchange. It's a note of debt, technically. It's what it says on the paper. But what is real money? There's cash, there's gold, and now there's Bitcoin. People see Bitcoin as this scam, I think, because it's not a physical entity that I can hold in my hand, type of thing.
Sure, yeah, it is digital, but it is backed by something physical, meaning power. It takes power to mine it. So that's what secures the network and makes sure it's not corrupted or manipulated. But the key characteristics of money, it basically breaks down to four things that qualifies a good money. The first being durability, meaning the money needs to withstand physical wear and tear over time. And they need to be able to retain their value without degrading easily. That's why something like salmon or fish, that wouldn't be a good money because it rots away, even though people do buy it and it can be, it is considered a market good, but it degrades. So that's not good money. So it needs to be durable, needs to be portable, right, meaning it must be easy to transport and transfer.
Right. The creation of money was because, trade was the original money, but because of what you're talking about, it was hard to retain a valuable trade item. So money was kind of created, if memory serves me correctly on history class.
Right. So again, okay, so just at a high level, the four characteristics of money for something to be qualified as, quote, good money is durability, portability, divisibility, and fungibility. So again, portable, it needs to be easy for people to carry. It needs to be divisible, meaning it can be broken down into smaller units to facilitate transactions. And it needs to have good fungibility, meaning money should be interchangeable. So like each unit needs to be identical. This way, it's like trusted and used universally. So Bitcoin basically encompasses all of these four characteristics at the highest level. Before Bitcoin, gold was used as money in the history of our, of humanity, because gold is hard to make. You can't really counterfeit it. There is only so much of it on this earth. Now, there's an argument to be made that there's much more of it out in the universe, but that's a whole nother topic that we don't need to go down.
Mars.
Right.
And
whatever.
the moon.
Asteroids, whatever.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah. So Bitcoin basically possesses those 4 characteristics at the highest level, meaning it is the perfect form of money. However, I can see why, we're not really taught to understand what money is. We just kind of assume it's this green piece of paper that we pass back and forth between each other. And we sometimes even believe that piece of paper is backed by something. And since 1971, that piece of paper hasn't been backed by anything other than the promise of the government. And before 1971, you used to be able to take your green notes, your bank notes, and exchange them for the actual gold. However, we have gone off the gold standard in that time. So we're about 50 years into this fiat money experiment. And if you look at histories of currencies from time to time, there has been, periods of time where fiat currencies, they don't really withstand the test of time. They typically collapse in around 50 years.
And when you say fiat currency, just for some clarity, because I feel like that is a word that is used in the Bitcoin community, but in the regular society, we hear cash or debit card or credit card. What is a fee? What is fiat? Is fiat currency cash? Honestly, when I'm looking at this, I should have put in here numbers or something, because there's only so much cash as well, but there's a number that we see in our banking accounts and everybody's banking accounts that ain't necessarily represented with cash or gold. We've heard the stories about people trying to withdraw a certain amount of cash from their banking account and they have to wait because the cash isn't technically there.
Right. I mean, banks operate off fractional reserve banking, meaning like if you're a bank, you don't have to, let's say you have 10 customers, or let's say for ease, you have 100 customers and each customer has $1 million. You would think the bank has to have $100 million in their account at all times, just in case their customers come to, redeem their funds, to withdraw their funds.
Right.
So banks do not operate this way. We've known this. This isn't a secret. They operate on fractional reserve banking. So they don't have to keep all the funds that they promise to have in their customers' accounts. And going back to your original question of fiat money, what is fiat money? It's basically just a type of money that is issued by the government. And the government maintains it as legal tender. And all legal tender means is just the official money. So like
the numbers USD would be a fiat currency.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the letters USD,
exactly.
Sorry.
Right. And some of the key characteristics of like what fiat currency is it basically has no intrinsic value because it's only valuable because the government declares it is, and people trust it as a purchasing power. And then it's also, again, the legal tender, meaning governments enforce it by law to be accepted for all debts, both public and private. And the other thing about fiat currency, and this is what's very different from Bitcoin, is it has an unlimited supply. So unlike commodity money, which is what we were talking about earlier, which is what's backed by gold, fiat currency can be printed or created in an unlimited amount, which
makes it imaginary in a way.
Like, well, for a long time, there wasn't a clear understanding of this, but this is what 100% without a reasonable doubt, that's what leads to inflation, is when governments print money. And then again, the other characteristic of a fiat currency is it's not redeemable for a physical commodity. So it can't be exchanged for a fixed amount of a physical asset. So again, the US dollar used to be backed by gold under the gold standard. But ever since 1971, it is 100% purely fiat, meaning you cannot take your dollars and exchange it for gold.
You mean all the dollars in circulation, technically?
Correct.
I mean, you can go to the gold store and buy some gold, but it's based on a private exchange.
Right.
Okay, that's interesting. So the bigger issue there then is, what is Bitcoin? What is it backed by? Because, and this has always been kind of my speculation with Bitcoin, is it does have its value and the value is moving, but then the value of it, whether it's $30,000 value or $100,000 value, it's still a dollar based value. It's still kind of based on that, whatever that fiat value is. So if the value of that fiat dollar goes down, then it goes down with it, correct?
Say that again.
So what I mean by that is, like, it's valued at 100. What is it right now? What's it valued? $106,000 or $177,000. One Bitcoin is worth 107,000 USD, for instance, dollars. If the USD dollar loses its value, though, doesn't the value of the Bitcoin go down with it, because the value of the Bitcoin is based on the value of the USD dollar?
Sure. Well, the thing is, when the value of the dollar goes down, the value of Bitcoin goes up, because Bitcoin has a fixed limited supply, meaning 21 million coins will only exist. There will never be more than 21 million coins ever. Like, that is impossible. You literally, you cannot create more Bitcoin. And that could be hard for people to grasp at first glance, because one, we've never had a perfect unit of account in the history of our species. We've never had absolute scarcity. And especially when it's digital, right? Like, what do you mean? How can it not be created? How can there not be more Bitcoin created? It's digital. It's not real. It lives on the internet. Couldn't somebody just click a button and create more Bitcoin?
Or
And the
hack
answer is
it or
no.
something like that. We think of hacking or something along those lines.
Sure. And the answer is no, because Bitcoin has achieved a network effect that's so big in terms of hash rate, which is what is used to basically, that is what is the engine behind Bitcoin for mining, where anybody in the world can choose to mine Bitcoin and contribute hash power to the network. And that number has achieved a number so big that no government, no corporation, no person could ever have the resources to overtake Bitcoin's network in terms of hash rate.
Okay.
Essentially, they would have to produce so much hash rate to make changes to Bitcoin's network. They would have to basically they would have to overtake the network by 51%.
Okay.
And Bitcoin is so big at this point that that's not even a threat for governments. Bitcoin has never been hacked, ever. It has never been manipulated, ever. And it's, Bitcoin went live in 2009. So it's been going for a while now. It's never been hacked. It's never been stopped. It's never been corrupted. And the time to do those things would have been early in Bitcoin's life cycle, when the network was a lot smaller. However, it is achieving network effect. It's only continuing to grow. It's only continuing to accumulate more hash rate in mining. And it's continuing to see more and more users across the globe joining this network, because it is a permissionless network that essentially creates money that's completely outside of government control, which is something our species needs today. It is time that we finally separate money from state, just like how we separated church and state, and that caused the Great Enlightenment. We are now in a period of time where we are going to achieve a separation of money and state. And again, like, people can, people want to go in the comments and say it's a scam. Like, hey, I don't blame you for thinking that. I That is the same thought that I had when I heard of this. But you need to really ask yourself, what is money? What's the role of money? And you really need to understand how Bitcoin works at the end of the day before you just go out and call it a scam. But
Well, the guy he followed up in here and he said, "So, how does an individual, or how does this invisible money go 3 times its value overnight?" What's the question? Because that was the big deal. That even though that big spike did happen, it did raise eyebrows. Like, how does a spike like that happen? Is it real? How can it be real?
well, because at the end of the day, like, it's simple supply and demand, right? Like, if demand goes up, in most cases, supply goes up. Like back in the day, when there was a huge demand for gold, there's now an incentive to increase the supply and mine more gold. Same with, the stock market. If a company's doing really well, there's an incentive for the CEO to issue more stock. Bitcoin, though, going back to what we talked about earlier, is absolute scarcity, meaning there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoins. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if everybody in the world wants Bitcoin. If the demand is so high, you will never be able to increase the supply. So the way that you're seeing these huge price spikes is because the market is responding. People are buying Bitcoin. They see a need for why they would need Bitcoin.
Right.
You have companies like MicroStrategy that are now actively borrowing at 0% interest dollars to buy Bitcoin by the billions. You have President-elect Donald Trump talking about, the U.S. government needs to basically embrace Bitcoin, and we need to have 1 million Bitcoins in our treasury, in the United States Treasury. So again, what's simply causing these price spikes is people buying on the market. And yes, you do see scenarios where you see the price go down, but that's typical behavior in a market. People are over leveraged and they have to sell assets. That's just the nature of a free market. However, over a long period of time, which is how most people should be looking at their investments or their money, Bitcoin's going to continue to go up.
And you were kind of talking about that just a little bit, about how off camera you were talking about how they're doing or trying to do some kind of Federal Reserve or something like that. Bitcoin is trying to do with the or the U.S. is trying to get involved in a Federal Reserve of Bitcoin.
Yeah, so just some background on me really quick. I grew up in Ohio, big motorsports fan. Did school and all that. Did that whole lane. Basically, studied engineering and finance, and worked in engineering for a long time. Worked in aerospace engineering as well. But recently, earlier this year, I decided to make a full-on pivot in my career and focus on Bitcoin full-time. And that has led me to a job at a company called BTC Inc., which is Bitcoin Magazine, and also the Bitcoin Conference. So I am responsible for helping put on one of the biggest Bitcoin conferences in the world. And back in July of this year, we had President-elect at the time, Donald Trump. He was our headliner.
Well, and that's your image here. Is that Bitcoin 2024 Nashville deal? And he came there just after being shot, right? That was like the week after.
Yeah, exactly. That was a crazy experience. That was a huge milestone in my career, just even seeing what it's like to work with a president's campaign team. And yeah, right. It was literally think it was a week and a half after he got shot.
And
So
that
there
was
was a
the
lot
next
of unknowns,
event,
like
right? That was
yeah,
his next public appearance.
Right. Well, I think he went to the Republican National Convention first, and that's where he had the Band-Aid on his ear. And then after that, it was our event. And
now, did he
there
have
was a
the
lot of
Band-Aid?
unknowns.
I mean, there was a lot of question marks there. You know, I mean, the left who don't believe in conspiracy theories all of a sudden had one. You know, that was crazy. They switch on a dime, it seems. Was there
He
a
did not
Band-Aid?
have the Band-Aid.
Did
He
you
did not
see a
have the
mark?
Band-Aid.
Did you see a mark or?
I believe that he got shot, yes.
But there wasn't a Band-Aid, though. What was there? Did it look like he got a bad ear piercing job or what?
Like I said, I believe that he was shot at. I don't believe in any deeper conspiracy, nor do I believe I don't know how many conspiracy theorists are on your show.
They're full. The drones. Keep going. Keep going.
But I don't even know where we're getting at.
I'm just making.
We're rewinding it with Trump. So yeah, basically our whole pitch was, hey, like, you know, Bitcoiners this isn't some like small community anymore, and it's a community that's well educated. It's a community that's getting richer by the year. You should really consider trying to win over the Bitcoin vote. We've never had anyone in government prior to Trump that was ever pro Bitcoin. I mean, the Biden, campaign literally took active measures with Operation Choke Point 2.0 to hurt our industry. And they were showing that, hey, we don't care that other countries are embracing this technology. We think it's a threat, and we're going to do everything we can to stop it. And Trump was the first president to really see, okay, this actually isn't a threat to the US dollar. This is a very innovative technology. And, I should consider trying to win over the Bitcoin vote. So yes, I will come speak. And to your point, exactly, it was right after he had gotten shot, and we weren't sure at the time if, is he going to show? Is he going to cancel on us? And he pretty much told my boss right away that I'm not canceling. So that was pretty cool. So anyways, going back to the U.S. Bitcoin Strategic Reserve this is not like conspiracy. You can literally go read the bill that Cynthia Lummis proposed. She's a senator out of Wyoming. You can talk about Trump. There's plenty of, documents to read about Trump proposing a U.S. Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, where basically the proposal is suggesting that the U.S. government acquires up to 1 million Bitcoins over a 5-year period. So that's about 200,000 Bitcoins a year. And that would ultimately, represent about 5% of the total supply. And so, again, since this is a capped limit of 21 million coins, you're going to see the prices skyrocket.
Right. So it's kind of like numbered football cards, for instance. It's, you get these rare ones that are like 1 of 10 or something. With the Bitcoin or with money, they're just randoms. They're like base cards, and some of them have different numbers on them and all that, but there's no limitations. With Bitcoin, it's 1 of 20, what did you say, 21 million?
Yeah, there's basically there's 21 million Bitcoins that are ever set to be circulating within the system. And of the 21 million, there's about 19.5, so about 19.5 million Bitcoins have already been mined. So there's only about 1.5 million Bitcoins left to be mined. And I can talk a little more. Maybe it would help the audience understand how that 21 million number comes, why is it 21 million, or how is it a fixed asset? Maybe it helps if I explain a little bit about how Bitcoin works, just to give an understanding. Do you think that would be helpful?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
Sure. So first, I want to make a clear point to the audience. Because one thing about Bitcoin, it has this industry that's very closely connected to it called crypto. And just so like your audience understands,
We've all heard the phrase cryptocurrency. We kind of think of Bitcoin as that or whatever, but
right. I think it's important to note that personally, I like to differentiate the two, because crypto is a very, I don't know. I don't even really understand the use case for why all these other cryptocurrencies
is it kind of
exist.
like, if we're talking like cash, is it kind of like paper? Is crypto and paper like a very similar word?
No, I mean, crypto might operate the exact same way as Bitcoin. It might have the same, mechanisms that make it work as Bitcoin. The reason why I think it is completely separate from Bitcoin is because there's nothing stopping somebody from launching a cryptocurrency and, launching it to market with with an issuance that isn't really fair, meaning like you can give 80% of the total supply of the cryptocurrency to your friends and then market the other 20% onto the market to watch the token go up in price momentarily and then have the 80% of the insiders sell on the market and basically cause the cryptocurrency to collapse.
Is that called like a pump and dump? Is that what that Logan Paul guy did or whatever?
Yeah, you see a lot of celebrities doing that. They, I think the Hawk Tuah girl just did it. She launched whatever Hawk Tuah coin, and if you looked at the tokenomics, it was like 90% of the supply was insiders. So like the market was only left to buy about 10%. So when the token goes live, everyday investors or traders buy the token, the insiders sell. You're their exit liquidity. Bitcoin's not this. Bitcoin is perfect money. Cryptocurrency is like arguably a scam. That's where I would probably stand with your audience and say, you know what? Crypto is a scam. So like the reason why Bitcoin's different is because Bitcoin was the first. So it has the longest history of operating the way it should. The other reason why Bitcoin is different is because it was a system that was designed without any insiders involved. So Bitcoin traded for a full year without even a dollar value attached to it because it was just a bunch of nerds sending this imaginary money back and forth.
Right.
And even the creator itself, when he mined the initial Bitcoin, that still required energy to get it. Does that make sense? He still had to expend energy and electricity to mine those Bitcoins. And then going back to how the 21 million number comes into play, Bitcoin operates on a blockchain, which is like this word that kind of gets thrown around in marketing, meetings and like, oh, everything's so efficient if you would, do a blockchain, which is almost a little BS, but let's just put that point to the side. So every 10 minutes, Bitcoin produces a new block on the blockchain. So every 10 minutes, the heartbeat of Bitcoin pumps. Every 10 minutes, a new block on the blockchain. And the way that these blocks work is they are what are recording the transactions. So each new transaction is recorded in a block, and the miners simply are doing computational work from the first block on the blockchain to the most recent block on the blockchain. And whichever miner solves the puzzle fastest are rewarded the new blocks, the new Bitcoins in the system. So when Bitcoin started, every 10 minutes, there would be 50 Bitcoins introduced into the system. So every 10 minutes, 50 new Bitcoins were introduced into the system, and those would be paid to the miners that solved it. They need to be rewarded for the energy and the work that they're doing to make sure the network's secured. And then every 2,140 blocks, which is about every 4 years, that block reward gets divided by 2. So every 4 years, the issuance gets cut in half. So it used to be 50 Bitcoins, then it was 25 Bitcoins, then it was 12.5 Bitcoins, and then it was 6.25 Bitcoins. And earlier this year, we had another, it's called a halving. We had another halving event this year. So now every 10 minutes, 3.125 Bitcoin get introduced into the system. And then 4 years later down the line, it'll be half of that number. Okay.
And so who is the miners and they're benefiting from this? Can it be anybody?
Yeah, for sure. Anybody can be a miner. Now, the question is, are you going to be profitable as a miner? And if you're like some, guy at home, the answer is probably not, because, it comes down to like who has access to cheap energy. And mining has really become industrialized. So there's huge mining farms that take up a significant amount of the hash rate on the network.
Well, I would assume that the U.S. government could farm pretty damn good or mine pretty good.
Sure. There's a lot of mining in Texas. It kind of boils down to like where you have access to cheap energy. But like if you are somebody that wants to mine at home, you can join what's called a pool. And basically what a pool is, it's a pool of miners. So like if you join a pool and that pool hits the block reward, that 3.125 Bitcoin, that reward is distributed amongst the pool. So it's not going to one miner, it's going to the pool of miners.
Mm.
And you even see these little things now called these bit axes. These are kind of cool. It's a new little open source project on the market where you can actually it's called solo mining. And it's just this little device that you plug into your outlet, connected to the internet, and you're actually mining, but you're a very small amount of the network hash rate. And it's essentially a lottery ticket. So you actually have better chances of hitting the block reward on these solo miners than you do playing in the lottery. And earlier this year, somebody actually hit the block reward. So they got 3.125 Bitcoin and they were solo mining. Now the odds are like incredibly slim.
It's like the lottery.
It is essentially like the lottery. But I thought that was pretty cool. And I'm hoping you see more of that, because I do want mining to be also decentralized in nature, much like how Bitcoin is decentralized.
Right, because like I said, it feels like the U.S. government could acquire resources and energy based on a regulation for free, I mean, they could be doing it on a grand scale.
Right. So, again, just to kind of tie it all back in, when I first heard of Bitcoin, I was like, oh, it's not real. I have my rental properties that I do well on. My employer pays me a nice paycheck. I can invest in stocks. I have my Roth IRA, my 401k. I didn't even have time to think about what Bitcoin was. Okay. And I remember thinking, it just seems like a scam. Like it's like this digital currency. Like, what does that even mean? Like, it's not real. Like, you can't hold it. And it wasn't until what I saw in 2020 COVID times when, the U.S. government decides they're going to print 60% of the money supply in 1 year. And when I mean 60%, I mean the total, like all the dollars that have ever circulated in the economy. They're printing 60% of that in 1 year to get us out of COVID. that was my light bulb moment of like, okay, our currency is 100% manipulated, and Bitcoin can't be manipulated. And I'm 32, and I want to be able to retire one day. And, inflation is something that's been happening for a while, but we were able to hide it in certain ways. For example, like 2008, we printed a lot of money to get us out, but we were able to hide the inflation because we basically took all of our manufacturing and all of our, industrial jobs. We pretty much shipped them overseas. So you didn't see your price, you didn't see your food prices really skyrocket during that time. You didn't see your cost for electronics increase at that time because you were able to hide the inflation by being able to bring down manufacturing costs since you were having everything produced in
Production
China.
price. Yeah.
Exactly. But now we're living in this period where we've hollowed out our economy, and, we printed 60% of the money supply, and you see record high inflation right now, even though like the number that they tell you on TV is actually a lie. Inflation is a lot higher than what the government is reporting. But that's why you see your eggs and your food prices are now skyrocketing, and they're not going to come down in price because we've hollowed out our economy. So, this is something people really need to consider when they're trying to plan for their future. So,
well, Trump says he's going to tariff our way out, or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
but it sounds like the funny thing is on that subject, just a little bit, is it's like you're saying the thing that built us out in 2008, subjugating our jobs and our manufacturing out to lower the production cost to keep the price in a certain range, even though the inflation of the dollar, it did go down, but it was too high. It was hidden in bringing down the production costs. But now we're going to tariff the thing that saved us, I guess, which is overseas production, and bring it back, and somehow that's going to save the day. That's scary in itself, right? I guess that's another reason to say go the Bitcoin route, right? I mean,
yeah, at the end of the day, like I kind of look at it this way. When you think of things of like inflation, like the government is actively robbing not only your wealth, but your time. Like we all go
time
to work
is money
every day. Yeah, we go to work every day, not because we love to, even though like, I'm blessed. I do love what I do, but I don't choose to like, wake up and work every day. I do it because I'm trying to preserve my, money is ultimately freedom.
Right.
And you want to be able to one day not have to worry about money. Not saying you want to necessarily live lavishly, but you want the freedom to be able to do whatever you want and move however you want. And inflation is like not only robbing people of their wealth, but it's robbing people of their time. And if you choose to save your money in dollars, you're going to forever be in this like rat race of like trying to retire one day because you're, the dollars that you use to buy your everyday goods is like now you need twice as many dollars, and your employer's not going to pay you twice as much. So Bitcoin, again, is a currency that you can save in. And yes, it can be volatile, but, over the long horizon, it is going up.
Well, and I think the only issue with that is that we don't go to the store. Everybody used to use cash, for instance. And then we started seeing this little deal pop up with a keypad that said debit or credit. And now everybody started using that more than the cash. I feel like Bitcoin's big hurdle to jump there is to be accepted into the economical system of checking out for goods or services. That's the big hurdle, I think, because once you get to that point, then people might, just like the debit card and the credit card, might start subjugating that usage, if that makes sense.
No, of course. That's actually what I tend to focus my time and energy now that I work fully in the Bitcoin industry. Is Bitcoin is right now in its current form a store of value, right? Like it acts a lot like a gold. I buy some Bitcoin today.
Right. We can't take
most
gold
likely,
to the store and check out with it, basically.
Right. Like Bitcoin, I buy some today. Pretty good chance 10 years from now, it's going to be worth more than what I paid for it 10 years ago, right? But Bitcoin is much more than that. I believe it is perfect money. It does have some scalability challenges that we need to overcome. So the way Bitcoin was designed was for it to be very simple, meaning it can be ran, the network can be ran on a very simple computer. I'm talking even more simple than your everyday laptops. It's designed in nature to be very simple, so that way there's no economic hurdles to, join the network. Somebody in Iowa can join the network. The U.S. government can join the network, or a kid in Africa can join the network. It's purposely designed to be simple and basic. However, that there's challenges when you're trying to scale the network. So let's say like everybody was like, you know what, Mike, we agree with you. Bitcoin's not a scam. It's actually money. Let's just say the world just all of a sudden decides I want to take Bitcoin as payment tomorrow. We can't take every transaction and stuff it into a block on Bitcoin's blockchain and expect the network to operate the way it should. It will, but a lot of transactions won't be able to fit in that block. So it has some scalability challenges that need to be overcome before it is a medium of exchange, meaning like you can go take your Bitcoin down to the grocery store and pay with Bitcoin. That is what I've dedicated my lane in Bitcoin and the industry on focusing on. And that's why I like working for the conference, because, our conference draws about 30,000 people that are Bitcoiners. They understand what Bitcoin is. And we require all of our merchants and vendors during the event to accept Bitcoin as payment. So
is that an
yes,
industry
like
in the processing of these payments? I feel like that's an industry in itself.
Well, okay. So that you bring up another good point. It's always interesting when you start talking about digital payments, right? Like if I were to go buy an apple down at the grocery store right now, a lot of things are required for me to do that, right? Like in a digital form. Let's say I don't have cash anymore. Like if I went down to the grocery store with cash and I go buy an apple and the apple's $1, I hand the clerk $1, they look at the dollar. We both agree that that's $1 and the funds are settled right there. Like, there's no question of like, does he actually have the money? Is it counterfeit? Like we can all agree that that's $1. I buy it and we move on. And that dollar can be spent right away. Now, if I were to go take my debit card down there, what is actually required in that process to buy that apple, right?
A data processing
and
company.
It's a lot. There's a lot. And it's something we don't think about as a society because it is kind of new. Like, digital payments haven't been around that long. I mean, they've been around I'm 32, so they haven't been around my whole life. But anyways, like for that process to work at a digital level, it requires me to have a bank, a card issuer. It requires the Visa network, and it requires the merchant, the grocery store, to also have a bank. And when I swipe that credit card for $1, not only am I now like leaving a digital footprint showing that Michael Markle bought a apple for $1 at this time, at this location, at this grocery store, which is like a privacy nightmare. It required my bank and the merchant's bank to communicate. it requires the Visa payment network most likely, or the MasterCard or Discover Card payment network, to communicate between the two banks to, you know, facilitate that transaction. Like, it's a very cumbersome process. And, you know, I believe that we should be able to transact freely as humans. And Bitcoin is actually essentially digital cash. So, like, if I were to, you know, if we do get to a point, and I do believe we will get there, I don't know what that time frame looks like to where merchants are accepting Bitcoin as payment. It's really bringing back the ethos of a cash-like payment. Like, when I bought that Apple with cash, you didn't know my name. You didn't know who I am. There was no question of, like, there's no permission. Like, you don't have to, like, call my bank up to be like, okay, can Mike afford this dollar? Are we going to approve this transaction or not? I simply hand you the dollar, and the clerk looks at it and is like, yep, we both agree it's a dollar. It's settled. We can move on. And even the merchant can go spend that dollar right away. Now, again, a Visa card transaction, there's a settlement period. Typically, the merchant just can't take that dollar and go spend it right away. There has to be like a day of clearance.
Yeah, and they lose a piece of that dollar in the process.
And they lose a piece of it. And most likely, you can't even do a payment with a credit card for $1. A lot of the merchants will be like, no, it's a $5 minimum. So yes, like, I think that is a, you know, if every merchant tomorrow all of a sudden started accepting Bitcoin, that would, yes, of course, people would be more inclined to have it and use it. But people also need to realize that Bitcoin is not a company. Bitcoin is not a government.
It's not Visa.
It's not Visa. This is not a top-down, you know, authoritarian movement. This is a grassroots movement. And Bitcoin adoption is going to continue to go up with the government continuing to mishandle funds, and the fiat currency system continues to collapse, as we are already seeing.
Well, and that kind of goes back to my original question, though. If the fiat currency dollar falls, doesn't the fiat currency value, because it's, you know, when we say $170 or $107,000, that $170,000 value is a dollar, a fiat dollar value of what Bitcoin is. So that would be my only concern, because if that dollar goes, then the value of the Bitcoin seemingly goes with it. Or are you saying there's other dollars that it can now be evaluated under?
No, you're thinking of it this way. Like, you know, you hear of like Latin American countries. You know, let's set the table here. So the US dollar is the global reserved currency. You can pretty much exchange any currency in the world for dollars. Pretty much every currency in the world is priced in dollars. So if I go down to Argentina, right, where they have the peso, you might have heard of Argentina having hyperinflation periods. Like, they typically, like, South American countries will experience hyperinflation like pretty much every decade. We haven't really seen it in the US for reasons that I outlined earlier. I mean, we are the world reserve currency. We're backed by the strongest military in the world.
Yeah, the bully. If we owe you $1, we'll come and take it. We'll see if you can, you know.
But if you look at the peso, you hear people like, oh, I go to Argentina or I go to Mexico, and like the dollar goes so far down there, right? I can go to dinner and have this amazing 5-star meal, and it might only cost me like $40, where it would have cost me like $200 in the US. So you could say the peso is hyperinflating against the dollar, meaning like maybe at one time 1 peso equaled $1, and then all of a sudden 2 pesos equaled $1, to all of a sudden 20 pesos equals $1, right? The peso would be hyperinflating against the dollar. But let me spin that around for your audience. I'm making an argument right now that the dollar is hyperinflating against Bitcoin, because less than 4 years ago, I could buy a Bitcoin for around $3,000 a coin. So I could buy one Bitcoin for $3,000. Well, fast forward to 4 years later, in money printing and government mismanagement, one Bitcoin now equals $106,000 per coin. So what's it going to be 4 years from now?
So are you also saying in that
$500,000 a coin?
Are you also saying in that increase, did Bitcoin increase over $100,000, or did the value of the dollar decrease, or is it a mixture of both?
I would say it's a mixture of both. I mean, but I would rather hold dollars than, I'm sorry, I'd rather hold Bitcoin than dollars, right? So, yeah, it's just something that I think your audience needs to take into consideration on, trying to protect their purchasing
and this
power.
is a racing audience, and we were going to get on the topics, and payouts is always a topic in the racing world. We've seen Bitcoin Indy 500 machines. We've seen NASCAR. You even got that Bitcoin sprint car shirt. You've talked, or at least we talked about you potentially having a Bitcoin sprint car out there on the track. I think you and Rico were close to doing something potentially at one point. But the racing world is kind of a little backwoods in traditionalism. And traditionalism, bet you the racing world is probably an 80% cash spender at businesses. They don't even like debit and credit cards, So
Love it.
I mean, I'm just saying, but I think we were talking about Logan Schuchart. I think I saw a tweet or something like that where you told Logan Schuchart when he won the $1 million race that he should have invested all of it into Bitcoin, because in this time period since then, it would be worth more than the dollar if he would have saved it since then, which technically would be true, correct?
Yeah, I put out a tweet in November of that year where I just said, because again, like, I'm just trying to bring light. And I love what you said about the motorsports community, because one, I love the motorsports community, and I love that a lot of it's cash business. I think that's beautiful. Again, I love the characteristics that cash, or the properties of money that cash has, right? We can transact freely between each other without the need of a bank or a payment network. But anyways, going back to Logan Schuchart in the $1 million race, I did put out a tweet because I was at the Eldora Million, and this was when Bitcoin had, quote, crashed, right? It was around, I think, $30,000 a coin. And, it's when I first started, like, kind of voicing up to the motorsports community on, like, hey, like, you guys should consider looking at Bitcoin as, like, the money for either paying out racers or vendors transacting between each other, because this is grassroots, right? Like, I don't want to involve unnecessary parties to tell me how to use my money. But yeah, I basically said, if Logan Schuchart, I think at the end of the year in November, I put out a tweet. It was like, what if Logan would have actually took that $1 million and, invested it into Bitcoin? And what sparked that tweet was because I was always a fan of the King's Royal, right? And the King's Royal, I can't remember what year it came to fruition. It was in the, do you know, Chaz,
I think
what year the
84.
first King's Royal? Right. So I think in 1984, right, it paid $50,000 to win.
Yes.
Well, $50,000 in 1984 is not the same $50,000 in, what, 2017, I think was the last, when was the last year that they did 50,000?
18. I think it was 18 was the last year, and then they went to 175, I believe, in 19.
Right. So, like, that's not the same. Like, we can all agree that $50,000 in 1984 would have gotten you a lot farther than $50,000 in 2018.
Right. I say this all the time as far as, like, the payouts of the sport in general. It's not the same. I mean, it's ridiculous. $10,000 to win a outlaw race in the 80s and $10,000 to win in 2024 is like $100 back then, or $200. Yeah, or well, not that, but yeah.
Right. So, and shout out to Tony for increasing the racers' pay, and shout out to Kyle Larson and Brad Sweet and those guys for not tolerating, having a low racer pay. It is a problem that needs to be addressed, but the money's broken. I think we can all agree on that. But anyways, okay, going back to Logan Schuchart and the $1 million race, I basically put out a tweet saying, congrats on the $1 million. Like, $1 million isn't going to get you as far as you think it is nowadays. You should, what if Logan would have taken that $1 million and bought Bitcoin? And I even did some other comparisons of like, what if he invested it in the stock market, like the S&P 500, or bought gold with it, or, whatever, or just kept it in the bank. And basically everything decreased in that time other than Bitcoin. So if Logan would have invested that $1 million into Bitcoin, that $1 million today would be worth around 3.4 million. That's a 237% gain. So and I think a better example for the audience, going back to when the government was handing out those stimulus checks, right? When everybody got $1,200 stimuluses, that was back, I think, in April 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
It was somewhere around
If you would have taken that $1,200 stimulus and bought Bitcoin, that $1,200 would now be worth $18,000 today. So there's your proof that the currency's hyperinflating. And
that $1,200 probably would only have about $1,000 worth of buying power, or maybe $800 in today's society.
Exactly. So, at the end of the day, this isn't a technology. We're talking about money, and money has been pre-programmed into us. So I don't expect the world to just wake up tomorrow and have this euphoric moment that Bitcoin is the future.
It's a psyop in a way.
But, I think when you see numbers like this, you should really start asking yourself, okay, what is money? And and the whole reason what inspired me to start talking about this, obviously I work for, I don't work for Bitcoin. Nobody does. It's this, it's not, it's a decentralized currency. There's no company behind Bitcoin. I do work for Bitcoin Magazine and Bitcoin Conference, but I wanted to really start stepping out and speaking to the motorsports communities, because one, I do resonate with them because I grew up racing. I love motorsports. And I think it's I think the Bitcoin community and the motorsports community share a lot of the same values. We all believe in a hard money. And when I mean hard money, all I'm meaning is basically money that's hard to create. Beachside real estate is a form of hard money because there's only so much coastline, right? Dollars is not hard money because you can create it out of thin air. So Bitcoin is hard money. You can't just create more of it. And when I think of people in motorsports community, I'm really thinking of grassroots people that work very hard in either skilled labor jobs where they should be demanding hard money. They should be getting paid in hard money. You should be getting paid in a money that somebody can't just steal from you in the form of inflation. So, again, I invite all the criticism. I'm here to answer any question. I just want to start bringing light to this because I love motorsports. I love the motorsports community, and I want to see motorsports have a, renaissance period like we saw back in the day. And I think if we start adopting hard money like Bitcoin, that's going to repair a lot of the problems that you see in motorsports, whether it's racers' pay or, the fans, the amount that they have to pay to go to races, or just the integrity of the sport. I mean, I think if we saw hard money, money that goes up over time that's getting paid out for these events, you're going to see a higher quality event, and you're going to all of a sudden restore the integrity of motorsports. You're going to see more teams that are competitive. You're going to see more racers that are competitive. You're not going to have to depend so much on people buying rides and rich money coming in. Like, yes, that's always going to be a problem.
Right.
That's always going to have something that's
Yeah,
there,
the value of winning is not there.
Right, exactly. Like, you could probably win every race and you're still not going to make a good living. Like, that's absurd. So, yeah, like, I'm going to continue to champion this. We are early. I don't expect, like, I wrote a letter to the High Limit series when they formed. I said, look, congratulations. It's a great idea. Like, I think there should be another body that's competing with the World of Outlaws. That way there are more options and more racer pay to go around. But, you should be different. You should be a trailblazer, and you guys should pay your racers in Bitcoin. And if they would have done that, I'm not saying they need to price the events in Bitcoin. Like, let's just say, I think a High Limit deal paid $50,000 to win most shows. So, like, if you would have paid $50,000 in Bitcoin, that would be like worth over double that today. So, imagine if I won a $50,000 race and I had to pay $25,000 in expenses, and I kept the rest in Bitcoin to pay out my crew members, my team, whatever. It's that amount of money is all of a sudden like worth over $50,000 again. So, like, again, like, it's a hard concept for people to grasp because we were all born in the dollar system. It's been engraved into our brains, but it is not going to work. And you're always going to face the same challenges over and over again until you start adopting a money that actually works. And Bitcoin is the only chance of us getting to that. And I do think we will hit it. But that's why I wanted to differentiate Bitcoin and crypto. Like, don't come talking to me about which crypto coin I should buy. The answer is always going to be Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to continue to go up in value. You should save your hard-earned money, your hard-earned time, and an asset that's hard. And Bitcoin is that asset.
Well, and it's hard to buy it, right? Like, some people, I guess Cash App. Well, how do you even buy it anymore? I mean, it's not like you can go to the bank and say, "Hey, give me some Bitcoin," or can you now?
No, you cannot go to the bank and say, I would like to buy some Bitcoin. But
right. I mean, what do you do? I mean,
yeah, you got to go to an exchange, right? And an exchange is like a Cash App, or you may have even heard of Coinbase.
PayPal has one. I mean,
I think you can buy Bitcoin on PayPal, but the other thing that your audience is going to have to learn when they get into Bitcoin is, how do they take ownership of that Bitcoin? You can almost think of it like cash, right? There's a difference between, like, you having $100 in your bank account and you having $100 bill sitting on your desk, right? Like, that $100 bill in your bank account, yes, that is your money, technically, even though I would argue it's not, right? It's the bank's money, but you have, ownership of that. It has your name on the account. You have to ask the bank for permission to spend that $100, where if it's a $100 bill sitting on your desk, you can simply take it, put it in your pocket, and go spend it. So there is a learning curve for doing what's called self-custody of your Bitcoin. So, like, your audience should, probably go to Cash App. That's what I use. It's a great tool. And buy Bitcoin. And if you keep your Bitcoin on Cash App, like, yes, that is your Bitcoin. But if Cash App all of a sudden blew up tomorrow, like we've seen banks do, your Bitcoin would be gone. So you need to not only buy the Bitcoin on Cash App, you need to send it to a wallet that only you control. It's not as hard as it sounds, but that's kind of a hard thing for people to grasp.
Is
Does that
a
make
wallet
sense?
like on your phone, or where's this wallet at? I mean,
So there are wallets on your phone, but if we're talking about a large sum of money, like for example, I keep the majority of my net worth in Bitcoin, you don't want to keep that wallet online. Wallets operate with keys. You have a public key, which is the address that you show people to basically receive funds. And then you have what's called a private key to be able to send funds. Now, if anybody ever gets a hold of that private key, they can steal all your money. Okay. So you want to make sure that that private key is secured and not kept somewhere where somebody can get it. Meaning you probably don't want to keep that online. So there are solutions called cold storage, which basically keeps that private key offline. So you're never susceptible to getting hacked to where all of a sudden somebody can take your money.
what if you forget this key?
So,
I mean, where do you put the key? You can't send it to your email. I mean, we put it on USB. I mean, is there a lot of lost Bitcoin? This sounds like a lot of Bitcoin can be like at the bottom of the ocean somewhere, like treasure chest.
they think there's about 1 million Bitcoin that have been lost because there are solutions now that make it much harder to lose your Bitcoin. But you got to think, like early on in 2010, there was a lot of people that had hundreds of Bitcoins on hard drives on their old computer because they didn't think Bitcoin was ever going to be something of value. And they simply threw away the hard drive or they lost that private key. And now all of a sudden 100 Bitcoin is, it's like $10 million. That's a beautiful, that's a lot of money, right? So they expect there to be about 1 million Bitcoins have already been lost from early on. But if you're somebody that's like new into it, there are tools that make it very hard for you to lose your Bitcoin. But going back to your point, Chaz, yeah, like if you lose your private key, you're going to lose your Bitcoin. There is no like 1-800 helpline. I lost my Bitcoin. Can you give me my private key? That's the whole point here. This is money separated from state, money separated from government, money separated from corporations. So if you lose your private key, you do lose your Bitcoin.
Well, and I guess that's the security that you get with cash and credit and debit is there's a lot of people involved. It's not as private, but you have those security blankets along with it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's, just to be clear, there is solutions that make it pretty hard for you to lose your Bitcoin. Like you can do what's called multi-signature wallets where it might take, instead of it just taking one private key to spend the Bitcoin, you might have a setup where it takes 2 of 3 keys. So like you can hold on to 2 keys and then you can give 1 key to like somebody you trust or a business that you trust. Might even be a government that you trust. Who knows what
Cash app that you trust,
Exactly. And that way, if you lose one of your keys, you still have access to that other key from your trusted third party. But that trusted third party couldn't take that key and spend your Bitcoin because it requires 2 signatures and they only have 1. So there's ways to mitigate the risk, right, of like losing the Bitcoin. So I don't think you need to like get that in depth about it with where we're at. My advice to your audience is like, start buying on Cash App. Okay. Just get familiar with it. And
then go to YouTube and research what is a crypto wallet, basically.
Yeah. Get a ledger device, get some type of cold storage solution and learn how to take that Bitcoin that's on Cash App and send it into a wallet that you control. And the private key that is used to recover the funds, in case you were to lose the device or, misplace it, or if it were to break. All it is simply 12 words written on a piece of paper in a certain order. It's like 12 4-letter words.
It's like a code.
Okay? It's a code, exactly. So you can, as long as you keep that piece of paper secured, you don't ever have to worry about anybody stealing your Bitcoin. So, maybe that's putting it in a safe. Maybe that's hiding it somewhere in your house that's not as well known, right?
Right.
But that's all it is.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess that's all we need to know, right? I mean, you told us the ins and outs. I mean, is there anything else you think you didn't cover to tell these people? I mean, we could go to the chat, but they're not believing in you, Mark. They're not believing in you at all. They're
I
saying
don't want them to believe in me.
Carson Macedo would lose his Bitcoin. They said. Somebody said when everybody starts to feel financially smart and confident, the market usually corrects itself to humble everyone. Oh my.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Look, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to, at the end of the day, I could care less if your audience decides to buy Bitcoin or not. I'm just simply
the messenger
I'm just providing my stance and what I think's right. And we can, revisit this conversation a year from now or 10 years from now. I don't really care. But no, I love the skepticism. You 100% should not just be taking my word to go buy Bitcoin. You should do your own research and understand why it exists and make your own judgment call from there. I would never advise somebody to just go off of, somebody that gets up on, a YouTube live stream and says buy Bitcoin and go blindly buy it. And whatever, I don't have the chat up in front of me, but you said somebody commented typically when people FOMO into something, they are the ones that get wrecked, the market downturns. And you know what? I honestly, Chaz, I agree with that. There is a lot of sell the news events. But I've been telling people, what I will tell your audience is you have to be thinking about it when everybody else isn't, right? So I was at the King's Royal. You were there. And I was preaching the same thing I'm preaching today. I'm look, Bitcoin, it's worth taking a look at. And I was dealt with the same things, it's a scam. Didn't the price just crash? All this stuff. I mean, we're sitting around 30,000 back then. So yes, I do agree that typically when there's fear, uncertainty, doubt, or people FOMO, fear of missing out, and they buy something, that asset may drop in value. But I don't want your audience to be thinking about Bitcoin as a way to make money. You should be buying Bitcoin with the thought process of this is the money that I'm saving and I'm never going to touch it. And I understand life gets hard and we have to pay our bills in dollars, and there may be, scenarios where we have to sell. But you shouldn't be looking at this as oh my God, my money doubled. Bitcoin went from 100 grand to 200 grand. I should sell. No, you should hold this, and it's going to be a tool that allows for your purchasing power to increase over time. That way you aren't robbed of your wealth and your time. And one day you can retire. And what would you ever sell Bitcoin for? Dollars? Why would I sell something that's, I'm sure there's some gold bugs in your audience. I'm sure there's some 70-year-old motorsports fan that's a big gold bug. Why would you sell your gold for dollars for something that they can create other than the need to transact? I do think Bitcoin will achieve, a point where we are transacting with it. But why would I sell my Bitcoin for dollars when I know they're going to print more? So yes, I think Bitcoin will continue to go up in value. I can't tell you what that timeline looks like. I'm not a fucking, I'm not a genie. I'm not like
Well, somebody
I'm just a
just said
normal guy.
Bitcoin is an asset class like stocks, bonds, sports cards, etc. Just invest a percentage, don't put all your money into any one asset class. Do you see it as an asset class? You're seeing it as more
Um,
than that.
I mean, I see it as the future of money, but yeah, sure, it's an asset class. Like let's say I don't know, if I'm 32, right? Like I can afford to I've done the homework. I've done my research. I've, you know, calculated the risks. There's a reason why I hold the majority of my Bitcoin, or I'm sorry, the majority of my net worth in Bitcoin, because I think it's going to be more valuable when I go to retire one day. But yeah, like let's say you are somebody that's like accumulated wealth and you have real estate, you have stocks, you have all these other things. Like I do think Bitcoin will be the best performing asset of our lifetime. I can probably prove that if anybody really wants to debate me on that. But yeah, I would not advise somebody that's like built wealth and they're not trying to, increase their purchasing power. They're simply trying to maintain. And yeah, you should, take 1%, 3%, 5%, maybe 10% of your net worth and buy Bitcoin. But to simply have no exposure, I mean, I think you're opening yourself up to tremendous risk.
That's a good
So
comment too. Somebody said cash makes cash, but Bitcoin don't make Bitcoin. Is that true? Like I think he's talking about working for the working.
I guess I'm not sure what that, you might have to
Yeah,
elaborate on that
cash
for me.
makes cash. Bitcoin don't make Bitcoin. I think he's saying you could spend cash to make more cash. I think that's what he meant or means. And there's no kind of way to spend Bitcoin to make more Bitcoin, or is there?
Yeah, you can leverage your Bitcoin, but I wouldn't advise that.
But that's what
So
people
he's
do when
saying
they
like,
spend cash, right? They leverage this amount of cash to potentially make more. You could lose it
sure,
too. I mean,
sure. Yeah, you can leverage Bitcoin. You can absolutely leverage it, but I would never recommend that. I think the upside is quite substantial the way it is without having to leverage and risk losing everything. But yeah, I don't know.
interesting. Okay, well, I think we covered all the basics in an hour and a half. I didn't think you'd be on here
We
that
didn't
damn
get to
long.
chat motorsports, man. I wanted to at least
Well, I
chat some
tried to bring you
motorsports
up to motorsports. What did you want to talk about with the motorsports?
Nah, I'm how are you where do you think the state of sprint car racing, like, are you happy with it? Fill me in a little bit. I've only been I follow MotoGP pretty religiously. I just got back from the F1 in Abu Dhabi. That was my first ever F1 race. I did get to go to Knoxville this year, which was really cool. But how is the state of sprint car racing? Like how, I know that high limit series was introduced last year, and I had my concerns and also was excited about it. I just think I saw the All Stars are also coming back this year, and
Hey, you're from
someone being
Ohio.
from
That should be a
Ohio.
big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super happy about that. Um, but yeah, like where would you say the state of sprint car racing is it in a healthy place? Is it trending in the right direction? Like, what
I
do you
mean,
think?
it's still behind late model racing, but I mean, it seems like it's continually going up. I don't know what this charter system that High Limit's bringing out has the biggest question marks of everything. Nobody knows what it really is now, and they're saying that people are going to get different levels of treatment and asset. It's just they have good ideas, but they got to be able to conclude with an idea. I think
So
that's the
so
problem.
the charter system is just basically where you're guaranteeing a certain amount of money if you're to show up to every race,
Or
right?
if you're
Like you're
just a part
giving
of the
out
system,
gas
right? Yeah, I
money.
mean, and you got an issue now where Roth technically won a charter, but they ain't said they are coming back for sure. So it's like, so where does that charter go? It's like, and they can't sell it because there's no necessary evaluation of its value. So it's like, what do
You
you
would think
got?
they'd be able to sell it because you got to think, like, even I know MotoGP, there's MotoGP being the motorcycle, it's the F1 of motorcycles. You can't just enter a MotoGP race, right? You would have to buy out a team. So I would think that Roth would be able to sell that charter.
Yeah, but for
But I
what?
guess,
No
like,
one
to
knows
your
what it's
point-
worth. In MotoGP, they got valued, evaluations of what a charter could be worth. There's no, it's such a question mark. They haven't actually explained it.
How does do you know how charters work in World of Outlaws?
They don't have one.
They don't get.
They have
really?
platinum
I thought they get gas
agreements.
money.
Yeah, it's an agreement. It's the year-to-year deal. It's not an established split of anything. It's an agreement of what they will receive. It's not the charter is supposed to be more so a cut of a percentage of income from the series and from flow and from streaming, and that's what it was described as. But it hasn't been fully described, so it's kind of an interesting thing.
Okay, I see. So the World of Outlaws in its present form, because they have it's called the mean 16, right?
Or well, no, that was a little outdated, but no, they don't really have a number on them anymore.
But like, if you were in that mean 16, you were given gas money to go to the event.
Yeah, you're
correct?
given certain amenities, pit passes, tow fees,
right.
Place guaranteed selling merchandise, stuff like that.
Was that a flat number across all the teams?
Yeah, it's a flat number across all teams, yes.
Okay. And basically it sounds like High Limit is doing charter deals, which
supposed to be a flat number.
The same.
Most people assumed it as a flat number, but now they're not saying it's a flat number. I will say I'm not trying to ruin
I could see why it shouldn't be a flat number.
Right, me too. And can we talk about that on the other side of a pee break, though? I have to go so bad, damn it.
No, do your thing.
All right, well, you're good to talk about this, though.
Sure, I'll ramble a little bit here.
Okay. We don't want you to get out of here as just being the damn egotistical Bitcoin guy that's trying to sell everyone's money off to the digital world. No, I'm just playing, but
let me see if I can look at the chat here as well.
Yeah, get the chat up. I'll go pee. We'll figure it out. You'll be able to yell at this knuckle Skinner guy. You'll hate him. I guarantee you. All right.
I don't hate anybody, man. But no, I'm curious. I guess I'm curious what the charter money looks like, because imagine if you're a guy that's bringing in, a crazy amount of money or a crazy amount of spotlight into the sport versus like somebody that's, doesn't put cheeks in the seats. Like, what does that look like? But also, how do you really calculate all that? I don't know. It's interesting. How do we defeat central banking systems? Well, the simple way is to opt out, right? And the easiest way to opt out is to buy Bitcoin, because it's completely separated from state. So I would advise, you're probably going to get laughed at, but like, starting next year, I am accepting my full salary in Bitcoin, and whatever Bitcoin I need to sell to pay bills, I'll do that. But I am opting out of this system. I refuse to be a part of a system that enriches a small group of people and doesn't really operate the way it should. Imagine if you're an entrepreneur in today's society, how do you even know what the cost of capital is? Like, we literally sit and wait for Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chairman, to get on TV and tell us what the inflation rate is. I mean, that's absurd. This is not the weather, right? Like, this isn't like, hey, are we going to have showers today, or is there going to be a tornado today? Like, this is money. Like, we should know the cost of capital. It shouldn't be some prediction year over year.
They're coming at you with questions if you want.
I know. Thank God. We're talking about racing too. So, do I watch local sprint car racing, like the Fast Series, Attica, Fremont, any local Ohio tracks that you like? Yeah. No. So I grew up in Mansfield. I used to race dirt go-karts when I was growing up. So a lot of my friends that raced dirt go-karts went on to race sprint cars. I didn't really have. I'm not gonna, like my family did whatever they could to support me, but we definitely didn't have the money to just get into sprint car racing. So I did grow up going to Attica and Fremont a lot. Attica is an amazing track. I would say out of all the local tracks in Ohio, Attica is one of the best. And then obviously you have your Eldoras and things of that nature. And I was really excited when Mansfield actually, I was around when they dumped a lot of money into that facility and started hosting NASCAR events like the Truck Series. I was part of all that. That was really cool. And then to see it close, I was pretty bummed. And then for it to go to dirt again, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And Cody Somner seems like a great promoter. It seemed like it had everything it needed to succeed. I remember they put on the 100,000 to win race that Shaffer won, but just seems almost like a curse. Like can't really get Mansfield up off the ground. Seems like it rains a lot there as well. But yeah, like I love Ohio has such a deep history and a great sprint car scene. So yeah, I typically in the summers will go to Attica and Fremont. I'm up in Catawba on the lake now, so those are the closest tracks to me. And then I typically make it down to Wayne County as well. I've always liked watching Sheldon, things of that nature. And obviously, Eldora is one of the best tracks in the world. I can say that with confidence since I've been to many different racetracks all around the world to see many different series. I don't think you can beat watching a 410 sprint car go around Eldora from the infield. I don't think there is a track that even comes close to that experience. I just got back from Abu Dhabi. I was at the F1 race and I had the blessing to be able to watch it on a boat. And that still did not even come close to watching, a sprint car barrel into turn 3 at Eldora from the infield. Like that is something to see in your life. So yes, I do make it to quite a bit of the tracks out
How
there.
how has the promotion or the expenditure of dirt racing in the Bitcoin community went? Has there been any?
Yeah, so I know no, okay, we had a Bitcoin NASCAR that some guy donated to us. It was it looked like I think it was a 2012 Keselowski car. It looked like a road course car. And we had it at our conference in Nashville. We wrapped it in Bitcoin and we used it as like our showpiece to announce that the conference was coming to Vegas because we're doing the conference in Vegas this year. And everybody loved that NASCAR piece.
You there? Oh, we lost him. Where'd he go? Oh, he went away. Hold on, we can try to get him back. We'll see if this works. Oh my. Oh no. We'll see if this works. Oh my. It was just getting into the good stuff where he was talking about racing and maybe getting into some of the more intricate segments. Hold on, let's see here. Balls to race, Chaz and Larson.
Launch another Bitcoin car. Did you lose me, Chaz?
Yes, we just got back just now.
Okay. Where did you
You were talking about the NASCAR vehicle.
Yeah, okay. So is there any interest from the Bitcoin community to get in motorsports? I don't know if you remember that Bitcoin shirt that I did.
Yeah.
The sprint car shirt.
Yeah,
that was our number one selling shirt. That was our number one selling shirt at the conference. And then
Out of
I
how
actually
many
just
shirts,
did
though? Like, so how many you think you sold?
we sold a decent amount. And then I think I was telling you the NASCAR that we did. We got a NASCAR that we wrapped. Everybody seemed to like that. I just did a version 2 of the Bitcoin Racing shirt, and it was a F1 car, and I just sold it because we did a conference in Abu Dhabi this past week. Everybody seemed to love that. But yeah, going back to like 2021, there was the Bitcoin IndyCar. That effort was not like this is where I think Bitcoin's really cool because it's a very grassroots movement. I thought it was cool that Ed Carpenter Racing decided to do a Bitcoin car in the Indy 500, but Bitcoin's not a corporation, so there's no like marketing department where you go, hey, Bitcoin, we want money to do a car. That had to all come from donations from the community, whether it was like cheap donations from like everyday people all the way up to whales, right, that have thousands of Bitcoins and they just love to see this kind of thing happen and come to fruition. So that's what I think is really cool is a grassroots movement in the Bitcoin and motorsports blend. But I think it is time now that we enter a bull market phase to maybe get the ideas going. Like, do we want to put a Bitcoin sprint car in the Nationals? Do we want to?
Well, in the affordability department,
bigger
in comparison to NASCAR or IndyCar racing, I mean, it's so much more affordable to potentially be a part of a sprint car team than these others.
Yeah, I think there would be more impact on a sprint car team because it's so grassroots in the way that it moves. Like, you would have more exposure to the smaller communities than versus like doing a NASCAR.
Well, but at the
Bitcoin
same
car.
time, you got a lot of blue collar, mixtured white collared style car owners and sponsors and track promoters that have big money and are just kind of, not attuned to it, and they have a lot of money though, whether that's in the farming industry or some blue collar, white collar ish industry that they've made a bunch of money in, manufacturing. I mean, rock products, all these things. There's million and billionaires in the sprint car industry, a lot of them.
For sure. I don't know. I maybe that's something we'd have to ask the communities, right? Like, would you rather see a Bitcoin race car, or would you rather see a Bitcoin race that paid a Bitcoin to win? And it's funny because if I would have announced that, 2 years ago, hey, this race pays a Bitcoin to win, that's 30 grand. That's still pretty good money. But now a Bitcoin's 100 grand. Or what if we like as a community raised a Bitcoin and we're like, hey, let's wait a year to do this race. Bitcoin might be worth 200,000, might be worth $1 million. Who knows? But I definitely want to take that initiative because it brings back, like, I had the opportunity to meet Earl Baltus, the promoter of Eldora Speedway, before he had passed. And I loved hearing the stories of like when they had those big monumental races, whether it was the King's Royal or the World 100 or the Mopar Million. It was always cool, like hearing the stories of like the winner getting the prize or the purse or the winnings, like literally, like they were handed the cash like in a shoebox. I think that's so cool and something that I wish we could get back to in a way. And I see Bitcoin as the opportunity for that to happen again because Bitcoin is a digital cash. So like, I don't know what the process is for a promoter to pay. Like, I'm sure since it's Tony Stewart, when he says he's going to pay $1 million, you're probably going to get your $1 million, right? But like, what if you were some Joe Schmo promoter, right? Like, you advertise this $1 million race. Like, you almost have to like stick around a few days after to make sure the check clears. But with Bitcoin, you can do like a physical handoff right then and there. Yes, it's digital, but you can actually do a physical handoff of the goods where it changes ownerships right then and
Well,
there
and how does it
instantly. And I think
steer in
that's
the
a kind
expense
of cool
department,
thing.
though? I mean, like as far as taxable.
No, dude, I don't want to. Dude, I'm
Is
not a
that
tax
a big?
expert, man.
Well, I'm just saying, is that a big like question mark in the Bitcoin world? I mean, I'm sure the government wants to regulate.
Sure. I know it's the way Bitcoin's taxed right now is they consider it property. So if you buy Bitcoin at $1 and it goes to $100, you are subject to capital gains, right? If you sell it. But I do think with the new administration coming in, there's opportunity to change the laws because it shouldn't be taxed. That's bullshit. Taxes are bullshit. I can go on a whole spiel about why I live in Puerto Rico and you know why I think taxation is truly theft. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I would advise to never. You don't have to worry about taxes if you don't sell it. So like, don't worry about selling it. Or if you do need to sell it, just make sure it's not at a capital gain. Just sell it whatever you think you need to sell right then and there, and you're not going to be subject to taxes. So, dude, taxes are a whole nother. Don't even get me started on taxes, man. Let's keep talking about motorsport.
Oh my, he just can't. Somebody's in that. Knuckle Skinner's not letting off on you. I don't know if you got the chat up still.
What's he saying?
Oh, he's always saying it. He's always saying it. You can't ever count him out. Are you reading it?
Yeah, he just yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know who you are, Knuckle Skinner, but maybe we can make a little friendly wager.
Oh
Like,
no.
I'd be willing to make a little friendly bet. So I guess he must think the price of Bitcoin, since it's 106,000, that we're at peak, that it can't go higher. It's absurd that it's this high, and there's no way that it's going to ever reach $1 million a coin. You know, I don't know what the timeline looks like to get to $1 million a coin, but we will get there. I know that sounds absurd to this audience. Everybody thinks I'm mentally insane, and
but you watched it go from a couple thousand to 100. So I mean, that's more than 10 times, right? And right now, all you got to do is 10 times the value to get to $1 million, right?
Yeah, but to his point, like he's looking at it at market cap, right? Like that's a huge market cap. Like that's insane. But I do think it'll pass gold. Like I think gold is a $16 trillion market cap. It's going to go past gold, which I think if it does, that's a $500,000 Bitcoin. But yeah, like I know at the end of the day, like maybe if you guys see me at Eldora or even at a local race, come up to me if you want to make a friendly bet. Knuckle Skinner, I'm more than happy to make a friendly bet with you, or we can put money on it. But I only want Bitcoin. You got to pay me in Bitcoin. I don't work hard for soft money. I want hard money in my life.
Oh my, you're throwing jabs at him.
No, I'm not.
You're throwing
willing
jabs
to put my
at
money where my
fiat
mouth
currency,
is.
at least for real. I mean, you're throwing jabs at that.
All right. What else do we got in the chat?
I mean, if you want to keep going down the chat, it could get bad. You know, these chat people, they're relentless.
Hey, shout out to the chat.
Oh, shout out to the chat. How do we introduce digital currency to the dirt world other than having a race where we pay in Bitcoin? I think the paying a race in Bitcoin is a good idea. You know, it's just getting these financiers and these millionaire people to buy into it, you know, but because that's the problem. The people who own the teams, are millionaires most of the time at a minimum.
Well, let me ask you this. What would be a number for the dirt world to pay attention? Like what if I put up a Bitcoin to win and I marketed this race? I don't really want to go about like trying to put on an entire event. Like maybe I can go to Eldora or maybe an event in the high limit series and say, you know what, like continue.
I mean,
your
we
normal
could do
perks,
one. I can do
want
one.
to donate a Bitcoin.
We could do our
but like,
own
what
private.
would be the amount for for you guys to care? Like, if I were to say I put on like, if it was 2020, right, and I announced, like, oh my God, there's a race, a sprint car race that pays 1 Bitcoin to win, that would have been like 5,000 to win. You guys would have not even cared, right? So, like, what is the amount for you guys to be like, wow, this is a lot of money? And the more that I think about it, seems like $100,000 races are almost kind of the norm now, which is great. But it's not like there's only 1 or 2 of them a year anymore. So what is the number that for people to care? Does it need to be $1 million to win, which would be right now about 10 Bitcoins to win? That's the question.
You could have a national, kind of like with a World 100 that increases 1,000 every year. You could do something that lasts, yearly. That's called like the Bitcoin Nationals or something, and it would increase based on the increase of the value, or it could decrease based on the value change. So that could work.
Right. Because, yeah, if I would have did it in 2020, it probably would have been around like July. Let's say July 2020 would have been around 15,000 to win. And then 21, I think it was, we'll call it like 35,000. 22, I think it was still around like 35, 40,000. And then 23, it was probably still around 30. And then now in 24, here we are at 100,000. So, yeah, what would it be? Yeah, I think that's like
we could do it. We
nice
could do it
thing
at
about, like,
Alltech
growing
every
up.
year, right down the road from right there in Florida. We could do it in February. The Bitcoin Nationals
It's got to be
annually.
big, man. We got to do it at Eldora. That's
Oh
the
God.
we got to do it at Eldora.
I have been talking to Tony Stewart here recently, but I don't know if Eldora is Eldora anymore. I think it's the Flowdora, Flow, I think, owns them.
Interesting.
That's what they keep saying.
But yeah, I would love to introduce it in some way. And I think I have some, there's some people in the community that would like to see an event like that. So we just did a flag football game in Abu Dhabi. We had some NFL players out there. Antonio Brown was out there. Russell Okung, he's an absolute legend. Love that guy. And we gave the MVP a whole Bitcoin. That was 100 grand, like just willy nilly right there. So maybe, I don't know. I would like it to be a meaningful amount, like $1 million, just to get the fans excited.
Maybe
but there's also I need to find a promoter that's like willing to try something different. And I thought I saw that in the High Limit series, but I don't know. I've never talked to.
Well, I mean, if you're limiting yourself to
Brad
Eldora only, you're kind of screwed.
I'd be open to anything. I just want it to be big. I don't want to take the responsibility of trying to do it at a local event. Like, I think, like, if we could partner with High Limit on one of their big races, that'd be cool. Or even World of Outlaws. Maybe I should, lend a helping hand to the World of Outlaws, because I grew up watching the World of Outlaws. I'm not one to like quickly jump on the hate train with them. I'm sure it's very hard to run
I think a cool
profitable dirt series,
I think a cool one would be something like the Bitcoin Challenge, something like that. Like at Knoxville Nationals, say you start in the top 3 rows. If you opt to start 21st and you win, or maybe finish top 5, you get a Bitcoin, the 21 number, obviously. That would be cool. Tying in with a big event. I don't know.
Ooh, the Chili Bowl. What about the Chili Bowl?
I mean, they definitely need money, so.
Huh.
I mean, they can't pay out. I don't know. You don't got enough people there. Maybe the Gateway Dirt Nationals, but that's a whole nother thing.
Well, I have to brainstorm here. But I think it should happen. And I think it would be cool for the history. Like, I always loved seeing the Kings Royal or the Knoxville National shirts. You see the history of the past winners, right? It'd be cool to see the history, especially in an asset that's appreciating in value. Like, because it'd be kind of funny to say, like, okay, the first one paid $1 million to win, right? And that's 10 Bitcoins. And then, like, maybe 30 years down the line, what was $1 million was 10 Bitcoins is now half a Bitcoin. I know people in the
Right.
audience are like, oh my God, this guy's insane. But it'd be kind of funny to see the history of like, wow, at one time that race paid 10 Bitcoin. That's crazy, But yeah, I don't know. We got to get creative here. But whatever ideas maybe people from the motorsports community might have as ideas, like please let me know. Like I would love to get in contact. Like I said, these are two industries that I think will blend very well together. And, my advice to people in the audience is like, don't take my word for it. Just like do your own research. But like, I mean, you literally have the president of the United States, like getting on TV saying like the US needs to be accumulating 100,000 Bitcoins every year. You have, publicly traded companies actively adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet. You have other governments around the world talking about, adopting a Bitcoin strategic reserve strategy. You have countries that are now even making it their official money, like El Salvador. I think you're going to continue to see more countries do that. I think the U.S. will be the last to do it because obviously we have we are the world reserve currency. So like Bitcoin is a hard concept for people in the U.S. to grasp, but yeah, like I said, I would love to talk more. I would love to get any feedback from anybody in the motorsports community. I'm a big motorsports fan and I love Bitcoin, and I'd love to see the two units come together and really, like, Bitcoin's ultimately a tool at the end of the day. It's a tool for financial freedom. It's a tool to, separate your money from your politics. And I think it's a tool that can help elevate racing to the next level and bring it back to like what racing used to be. I'm sure we all think about the good old days in racing, meaning like where it was very competitive, where somebody that had the heart and the talent could actually make it. I don't know if those days really exist anymore, because even like a Kyle Larson, you still had to have a dad that was willing to buy you a 410 sprint car. I could be wrong there. Did his dad buy him a sprint car?
No, he bought him go-karts, but he still had to have rich people invest money into him. He still had to have people with money find him. So,
right. Okay. So yeah, I mean, then yeah, kudos to Larson. That's very impressive.
But if he's still the lucky one that got the rich dads and people to put money into him. There's probably guys just as talented as him that didn't have that. So,
for sure. No, I'll pay my respect though. I always thought maybe his dad got him a 410 sprint car, but if he never got him past go-karts, that is quite impressive.
Yeah.
But that's rare, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, he could be just as left behind as all the others.
El Salvador's GDP is the side of Fresno. He is right. There are a lot of companies that have larger GDP than El Salvador, but El Salvador is going to end up becoming one of the richest countries on the planet here. So like, it's already crazy what adopting a Bitcoin strategy has done for their countries in that short time.
They're going to keep fighting you. They're just out to attack, it looks like.
No, I mean, I invite it. I'm fight away. I will answer any question. I'm not here to hide. I have no financial gain from this conversation.
Oh, God.
What else we got? What else is being talked about in sprint cars?
Nothing really. I mean, it's off season, so there's not really much happening. I mean,
any big indoor races coming up?
I mean, Chili Bow shootout. They just had a race where Bell got beat because Bell's back in dirt now. That's intriguing.
So I heard. I used to go to Turkey. What is it? Turkey night. The USAC deal in Ventura.
Yeah, that happened.
My dad was there, and he told me Kyle Busch was running, and Kurt Busch was there to watch. So is Kyle getting ready to get into midgets?
Well, he's already announced that he's running the Chili Bowl and he'll be running Shootout.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Larson going to run the Chili Bowl?
Yeah, he's entered as well. This is why before you came on, I was like, how much do you want to talk racing? I don't want you to feel like you don't know what we've already talked about, technically.
Yeah, no. So, okay, cool. So I have not been to the Chili Bowl yet. I feel like I've hit every single, race that I've ever wanted to see in person. Maybe not all of them. I still want to see the Isle of Man. That's a cool race. But I've never been to the Chili Bowl. Like, is it worth seeing in person?
It's a horrible race to attend. I mean, if you've never been there, cool, do it. But you're cheek to cheek. There's no room. I mean, if you like, the kind of standing in the third row of a big giant concert everywhere you go. I mean, if you go, you got to have purchase tickets. Don't just get a pit pass, or you won't have nowhere to sit. It's not as pleasurable as the in-person experience, but it is a big event. So if you've never went, you should go.
Okay. Yeah, I always like seeing the events that get. I mean, there's probably not a bigger motorsports race that gets more cars, right? I mean, the Chili Bowl gets like over 300 entries, right? Am I understanding that?
Yeah, I mean, Shootout gets more, but that's the Shootout. The Super Nationals gets more, but that's fendered cars in Iowa.
Does it drop off pretty quick too? Like how many of those 300 cars realistically can win?
There's only probably about 25 driver car combos that can win.
Okay.
I would say.
Nice. Somebody asked, am I buying NFTs? No.
Oh God.
I would never advise people to buy NFTs. But just buy Bitcoin. It's that simple.
So you're dealing with the stereotype. They hear Bitcoin and they hear all the stereotypes of NFTs and pump and dumps and Dogecoins and underground gambling and prostitution, and Illuminati and P Diddy. And then you're on here saying, well, you could be a minor, and it's like, what? No, we could be minors. What? I mean,
yeah, no, I would not buy NFTs. I simply just buy Bitcoin, forget about it, and put it away. Dude, what about what's going on with the high limit and gambling? What's going on there?
They're just supposed to start gambling. You're supposed to be able to start gambling on high limit next year. That's all. I mean, it's kind of cut and dry. I think it's bullshit, though. I think there's going to be so much fixings and shit. It's just not regulated like the NFL and NBA. So it's like, how can you control it? I mean, I guess it's cool. Everybody's just nice and no nefarious actions will partake, but that's usually not how that works.
Maybe that's I'd be down to start an underground gambling at the race. You have to be present at the races and you can only pay in Bitcoin. That way there's no risk.
Well, that is a deal with Bitcoin, right? You can legally gamble with it no matter what, anywhere.
I mean, it's money that you don't have to have permission to spend, right? Like, again, when I swipe that credit card, that requires two banks to communicate and a payment network to say, can Mike spend this money? And if it's used for gambling or illicit activities, most likely they're going to say no. Where Bitcoin, much like cash, you don't need a bank to transact freely. You don't need a third party. So yes, you can gamble with Bitcoin. You can do anything.
You would just need a bank to be able to sustain the bets.
You would need somebody, doesn't need to be a bank, but you would need somebody to you would need some type of bookie, right? That's like holding the funds to make sure. I mean, they're building like trustless bookies, like they're called oracles, but I don't think we're there yet as a technology to where, this oracle holds the funds, and if these outcomes happen, this is who gets the payouts, right? So if so and so wins the race, then the payout goes to this person. If this other person wins the race, the payout goes to this person. But anyways, going back to gambling in the sport, like, we've always done like I always camped out at Eldora every year, and I always enjoyed the people that would come around. You pull straws, right, for like starting positions, and if you pulled the straw 7, right, you get starting position 7, and if they go on to win the race, then you win the prize pool.
Right.
I think that's pretty cool, but gambling can get very dark quickly. Like, I do not like I'm sure they're going to have to use some app or like a DraftKings or, whatever, stake.com, whatever these, monopolistic gambling companies are. I do not like that thought of introducing it in that means. Like, if High Limit was going to introduce a system for gambling, I love it. I think it's cool. It makes the sport more exciting, but I hope they don't rely on a third party to build it for them. I hope they do it themselves. That way it keeps kind of the integrity, and I don't know. Like, I don't like everything that comes with gambling. It can be quite a dark industry, especially if you're using like these big companies. So I don't know. Like I said, like Brad Sweet, whatever, Kyle Larson, if you're listening, like, I would love to build you guys. I can 100% build you guys a system for gambling if we use Bitcoin. And we'll do it in a way that
they're doing it through the same company
laws or regulations.
They're doing it through the same company that USAC did, some alt sports.
So, like, is it weird though? Like, does it do where if you bet $1,000 and you win, do you have to bet that 1,000 again before you can withdraw funds?
No,
I've seen gambling sites do that. Okay.
No.
Well, that'll be interesting.
Apparently,
I'm excited to see.
Apparently, though, the World of Outlaws is coming out with something too. So
interesting. we could do like World of Outlaw coin, like pump and dump crypto scams. That would be a fun way to gamble too.
Yeah, World of Outlaw coin. Yeah. Remember, High Limit tried to do the NFT deal, I think.
Yeah. Did they? Well, hopefully they didn't, because I would not advise that. I saw somebody in the chat say Bitcoin ordinals.
All Stars used to be by Tezos, remember? So.
Yeah. Wow, this Trick Dickel guy, he knows Bitcoin. He's talking about Mt. Gox, talking about ordinals. So to your point, Trick Dickel, I do think ordinals are different than NFTs. I do own some ordinals, but I would not advise a newbie that's getting into Bitcoin to buy ordinals. I would just say buy the coin. And that's interesting. He's talking about Mt. Gox, which was a famous exchange back in early days of Bitcoin. We're talking like 2013. I think they were doing the majority of the volume on Bitcoin, and the exchange got hacked, and a lot of people lost their Bitcoin. But it goes back to what I talked about earlier. Like, Bitcoin has never been hacked, but exchanges have been hacked, which is why you should never keep your Bitcoin on an exchange like a Cash App or a Coinbase. You should buy it on there and send it to a wallet that you control.
With Sats or whatever it is.
And that's the other. Oh yeah, one last thing. I mean, we can keep going. I can go for maybe another 10 more minutes, but the other thing is, like, keep in mind, people, you're going to see the price of Bitcoin continue to climb. You don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin to be an owner of Bitcoin. You can buy $1's worth. You can buy a penny's worth. You can buy a whole coin, whatever you want. Again, just my advice to anybody that's new is, like, treat it like your retirement account. Like, just every paycheck, put $100, buy it on Cash App, $100 every week, set up a reoccurring buy, then take that Bitcoin and send it to your wallet that's in your control. And now you're a self-sovereign individual. Now you don't have to get caught up in the clown world of politics. It really elevates your level of thinking once you know, like, hey, my money is truly unfuckable. I truly have fuck you money at that point. It's quite nice. So.
And why do you live in Puerto Rico again? What's the point? Why does everybody go to Puerto Rico? What is it?
So I'm lucky. Like, I work remote now with Bitcoin Magazine, so I can live anywhere and it doesn't really affect my work. Like, I don't go to a manufacturing facility like I used to when I worked in engineering and things of that nature. So I moved to Puerto Rico because it allows me to maintain my U.S. citizenship, meaning I still have my U.S. passport, but I don't have to pay federal income tax. So if I make $100,000 a year, pretty much 40,000 of that 100,000 goes to federal income taxes. If you move to Puerto Rico, you get subject to a 4% flat tax. So essentially, I got a 40% raise overnight doing that, and there's also no capital gains taxes over there. So, not everybody gets the privilege of being able to work online. So I'm very lucky that I've worked very hard to get to this point. But I saw it as the smartest move on the chessboard. I don't want to, maybe one day I will come back and pay taxes. I'm not anti-government, but I just think the government has, overstepped their boundaries. And, I do agree, use your voice to vote and enact change. But I thought, for me personally, the best change was to, use my feet and leave. I'm not anti-American by any means. I love America. It's the best country on earth. Puerto Rico is part of the United States. But, I'm just not really happy with how the government's been acting. I am excited to see what the Trump administration will do. But, at the time, that was the smartest move on the chessboard for me, so I took advantage of it.
What do you lose by being in
so that's
Puerto
why I'm there.
Rico?
So you have to live in Puerto Rico. It needs to be your primary residence, meaning you have to live there 183 days out of the 365 days out of the year. So you do need to live there. So if you don't like it, that could be a sell for people, or that could be a hard sell for people. I like it. I don't mind the beaches and the scenery. It's quite nice. It's a lot nicer than I thought it would be. You do give up your right to vote. So I was not able to vote in this last presidential election. But you know what? I will take saving 40% on my taxes than having to vote right now. So, yeah, so you do lose that. But we'll see. Like I said, if the U.S. government decides to start acting in an appropriate manner, which it was not, and I don't think it will anytime soon, I'm more than happy to come back. Again, I'm not anti-government.
They're in here saying tax evader and that's what you're doing. I mean, you're explaining. I mean, it's fine. It's smart,
no,
right?
I mean, I still have to pay taxes. I'm just paying 4% instead of a 40%. So if people want to call me a tax evader, that's fine. I am playing by. I'm not breaking any laws. I am operating within the legal requirements. Like, anybody can do this. But you know what? Fuck taxes. Taxes are theft. I'm like one of the people that probably would have been pouring out the tea during the Boston Tea Party when they, introduced a small tax on tea. I would be pissed, let alone watching my, hard-earned money get taxed just to see some DEI representatives get put into office. Like, that's absurd. I'm not going to be a part of that system. So, yeah, I'm sorry if that upsets people, but that's the reality.
Well,
so,
and that's why I was curious on if you lose any benefits of not paying these full taxes, like in any way, like security wise or benefit wise or anything, roads or.
I don't like. I'm not one of those people that believe, well, if there's no taxes, who's going to pay for the roads? Like, roads existed long before taxes, people.
Well, yeah. No, I agree there, but what about security? I mean, I'm assuming you are still protected by the military?
For sure.
So you ain't really lost much.
Look,
You ain't really lost much except the ability to vote, technically.
Right. And I'm a big proponent of our troops, man. Love our military. I just don't think the government. I'm more than happy to pay taxes for our military. No problem there. But we have far overstepped our government spending, and that's my way of enacting change, is moving with my feet. So people want to call me a tax evader. That's not necessarily how I view it, but I can understand why they might seem that way. But I'm just simply looking at the smartest move on the chessboard to protect my wealth and my purchasing power, because I get up and go to work every day just like everybody else. And I don't know, I'm sure other people feel the same way. Like you can't tell me you're happy with how your tax dollars are getting spent. So again, I don't really want to go into a tax discussion. It's too I don't know, it can get me fired up for sure. So, but yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll let you go, I guess. I mean, they're just coming after you. They don't want to hear it.
Did I change my name to Miguel? I did not change my name to Miguel. And I cannot vote in the primaries. I can vote in the local Puerto Rican elections, but I cannot vote for presidential elections. I can't, so maybe, I don't know. Maybe my word's no good. Maybe you shouldn't maybe you can't take anything I said about Bitcoin because I don't have the ability to vote. But like I said, my final word to everybody is just, hey, I'm not gonna, I can't tell you what to do, nor do I want to tell you what to do. You have the freedom to choose. That's the beauty of the country we live in. But it's definitely something to think about. And you guys can call me crazy. That's fine. I was, saying the same thing 2 years ago when Bitcoin was 30 grand. I was saying the same thing 2 years prior to that when Bitcoin was 5 grand. And here we are sitting at over 100,000. And it might stay at 100,000 for a year, might stay at 100,000 for 2 more years. I don't know. But I'm curious where we will be 10 years down the line. And I'm not saying get in as an investment. I'm just simply wanting my fellow Americans to protect their purchasing power and everything they've worked for. And Bitcoin is the tool that allows you to protect your purchasing power. So just consider it and think about what it is, and before you make some quick judgment. Again, everybody that I've talked to in Bitcoin, whether they're a whale or a newbie, we've all had the same path into Bitcoin. I have never met one person that heard of Bitcoin and did not think it was a scam right away. So your thought process is just like everybody else's. So I'm just advising that people take a second look and come to their own conclusion. And if you see me out at the racetrack, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody. Come up to me. I probably will be wearing a Bitcoin Racing shirt. So please come up to me. I'm happy to answer any questions. Happy to just know the motorsports community more. So yeah, I guess that would be my final say.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in, and I guess or talking, and I guess let us know what Trump texts you from time to time. That's the inside info we need.
One thing I will say about Trump that I really respect, though, is I just feel like he cares, like he really wants us to be number one. I love that, because for a while there, it seemed like it was almost wrong to have, I don't know, it seemed like it felt weird to have like pride in certain ways, and I'm ecstatic. I'm curious to see what this administration does. I'm very bullish on the future, and I'm very optimistic. So I'm very optimistic because we have Bitcoin, and I'm even more optimistic now that we have a presidential, now that we have a president that also wants to win and embraces it. So
I think it was the end of the offended era in a way. you know, are you getting knocked in? Somebody busting in on you? What's going on? Housekeeping? Oh my.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you.
Oh,
It's okay.
housekeeping's busting in. Oh my. I think it was the end of the offended era, personally. Like, I think that people became too sensitive in society, and that vote was basically like, we're tired of the bullshit. Get over it. A joke's a joke. Not everybody's offended. So I think socially that's what happened there. But that's
I
just
hope
me.
so, man. I hope. I'm getting sick of the clown world. It's not really funny anymore. It's getting pretty serious. So,
Right.
yeah, I think with tools like Bitcoin, we'll see a more prosperous future, to say the least. So,
All right. Well, thanks.
what's the next race on your calendar?
Maybe Chili Bowl. I don't know. Outside of that, maybe Florida. I don't know. We're just trying to make shit happen. I think watching Australia is going to be interesting this year. Probably not going to go, but it should be interesting. High Limit is going there, so that'll be something. Chili Bowl, I think, is going to be a little bit better this year. You'll have Larson there, Bell's back, so potentially Chili Bowl. We'll see. You know, Kyle Busch, like you said, but we'll see. Maybe Chili Bowl. We'll see.
Cool. All right. Well, I think this might be the year I might try to make it out there. So.
Oh no, Bitcoin's coming in.
Yeah, I'll take all the hate. I don't.
We should get like a big Bitcoin flag, like a big B, and just like wear it like a hat. You know,
we should get a Bitcoin car in the race.
I mean, that's easy to obtain. Simple.
But it needs to be one that can win.
That's hard. That's hard.
Yeah, that puts us down to 25 cars, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, if you want to win, probably like 10, 5 maybe. You know, Larson, Bell is going to be a chance. Thorson, Justin Grant. You know, there's only a few really, really hard hitters that has a chance to win.
Who's your prediction?
I mean, it's hard to bet against Larson, but I would think that Bell comes back in style. I think Bell.
Yeah, because Bell hasn't been competing, right?
Right, yeah. His daddy wouldn't let him.
Oh, Joe Gibbs?
Yeah, his daddy. It pays his life, yeah.
Well, hopefully he can negotiate. Yeah, I'd love to see him back in more sprint car stuff. You know, I know Larson was able to negotiate that. I think Bell has that negotiating power. Maybe not, though. I don't know what he draws in terms of cheeks in the seats or merch sales. But
right.
That's cool. I'm glad to see that, or glad to hear that Bell will be back in. And I think you're right. This might be the year to go. So I always thought Bell was a better midget driver than Larson by far. So
yeah, but he lost this last weekend, Bill. He was leading a lot, but that Carter Sarf beat him. But it was his first race back. But I mean, he was leading, so I mean, he wasn't off. He was on it. Apparently, the only reason they're wanting
driving for Keith Coons.
Rico hasn't announced he's racing it. But
interesting.
Apparently, the only reason Bell got back in it is because Ty Gibbs wants to race dirt now. So, and Chase Briscoe came to the team. So Ty Gibbs went to Grandpa and said, "We want to race dirt," basically.
Okay, nice.
So,
well, cool. That's good news. That's good for motorsports.
We'll see. We'll see how it works. Like I said, Chili Bowl may be the only next race to attend. We'll see.
Cool. Well, one last thing for anybody that's listening, feel free to reach out to me.
I was about to say, how they contact you. Yeah.
Yeah. You can find me at Buckeye_Bitcoin on Twitter. I also have BuckeyeBitcoin.com if you want to shoot me an email. Let's get in touch. Let's talk. Would love to meet any of you guys out at the track. And then also we have our conference coming up in Vegas. And I can't say who's going to headline, but it's not going to disappoint. So you might want to consider going to that if that's interested.
When is
to
that?
You guys? It's going to be a great event. It's in May, end of May.
Okay.
It's going to be out in Vegas. You'll learn a lot. It has everything you could want. If you're going to learn, if you're going to party, if you're going to meet people, it's a great event, and I highly recommend coming out, especially if you don't know anything about it. So, get in touch with me. Would love to hear who you guys are, and would love to talk next time at the races. So thank you, Chaz. It's been an honor to be on. Love what you're doing. Love your thumbnails. That's what always draws me into these YouTube videos. You're killing it. And good to hear from you as always.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on. Been talking about it for a while and finally got to do it.
Cool. Bitcoin to the moon. Let's go.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in.
Ciao.
Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it with Markle of the Bitcoin situation. A lot to the situation, a lot of different angles to think about. There is a form of indoctrination into what he's saying, that we are raised into to view different currencies and how they operate and work and what's viable, what's not viable. I'm intrigued on the racing inclusion. That would be interesting. That would definitely be interesting. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, as always, like the video, share it, comment, as some of you crazy people have been doing. And also, tune into the tunes. Until next time, listen to the Chaz on all your music platforms. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. And until next time, we are going to be watching Monday Night Football tonight and losing all of our money in gambling. Screw high limit. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Buckeye Bitcoin for tuning in. You heard him, Buckeye_Bitcoin on Twitter or X. You can contact him there directly. But thanks for tuning in. We will catch you next time.